Lately, I've been getting more and more comments asking, suggesting, and even insisting that I'm AI generated. And like, thanks, I guess? Or screw you? I'm not sure which. So, what's the real answer? Am I AI generated? Of course not. Then again, that's exactly what an AI would say, so instead of simply trying to convince you one way or the other, I'm going to explore why this question carries more depth than you may think, and why your questioning my humanity might actually be a good thing. It started about a year ago, in the comment section of my video about abandoned plotlines in Game of Thrones. The same question kept popping up, some asking sincerely, others accusingly. But what were they really hoping to learn? The answer is likely one of two things. It's either the secrets of my immaculate skincare routine, or about authentic human connections. If it's the former, check the link in the description. And if it's the latter, then you may be curious as to whether there's a real person behind all that skincare and Game of Thrones content. Someone who spent late nights putting these videos together because they genuinely believe these ideas matter enough to be shared and worthy of your attention. Not some heartless algorithm optimizing for engagement. When I first saw these comments, I was honestly a bit annoyed, but then I realized that this is something I've been thinking about sometimes too, and it sent me down this philosophical rabbit hole for which I now find myself really grateful. Because when you watch an organically made video, you're not just consuming information, you're participating in a relationship, offering your time and attention to another consciousness, me in this case, who likewise derives satisfaction from your participation. This exchange matters, and that's why we feel betrayed when we discover that something we've enjoyed was generated without a human behind it who cared. But how can we even know what's real? We're currently undergoing what philosophers call an epistemic crisis, a fundamental rupture in how we determine what's real and what isn't. I think we all have these moments where we look at social media and stop to think, wait, this isn't real. And in this exercise, we're developing a new kind of literacy for authenticity. Each generation has faced its own media literacy challenges. Our grandparents taught their children not to believe in everything they saw on TV, and our parents taught us to not believe everything we read on the internet. In a future where anything or anyone could be AI, what will we teach our children? With the complexity of the challenge being higher than ever, and with the goalposts seemingly moving all the time, perhaps the answer isn't about discerning between organic and artificial at all, but rather the same goal our parents and grandparents had, about evaluating the truth and meaning behind any message, regardless of its source. René Descartes said, "I think, therefore I am, the only certainty in an uncertain world." But here's the problem with that. I can tell you I'm thinking, but you can never truly verify this. And that, ladies and generated men, leads us to the uncanny valley, that unsettling feeling when something appears almost but not quite human. Me, apparently. This phenomenon was first described by robotics professor Masahiro Mori in 1970, 3 years before the movie Westworld came out. Yes, that's right, the original is a film from '73, which, for the uninitiated, is about a theme park with robot cowboys in it.
Westworld, lawless violence on the American frontier of 1880.
The show Westworld from 2016, on the other hand, takes just about everything a couple steps further, and starts asking questions about what it even means to be human, and about the nature of consciousness itself.
There is no threshold that makes us greater than the sum of our parts, no inflection point at which we become fully alive. We can't define consciousness because consciousness does not exist.
What they fail to account for is that the robots themselves don't know they're not human. So, for them, being hurt and killed is very scary and real. They think, so are they? What's fascinating is that we're now experiencing the inverse of this, or so I would have you believe, where real humans are being perceived as artificial. But let's make things even more complicated. Even if I'm a breathing, thinking human being, what you're watching is still scripted, performed, edited, color graded, and sound engineered. Which means that even in the most human scenario possible, the me you're experiencing is already highly curated and quite different from the alleged real person you could bump into in the streets. And like, even if I wore a different shirt for once, or showed that what's behind me is just a green screen, or stood up to reveal that I haven't been wearing pants this whole time, that still doesn't prove anything. And this brings us to what I find to be the most fascinating thing. All those comments questioning my humanity aren't so much signs of my failure to seem authentic as they're signs of your ability to detect subtle clues that something might be off. Okay, so how do you know whether I'm AI? Well, maybe a better question is, if my content challenges your perspective or simply entertains you, does it matter whether I'm flesh and bone or a mesh of code? Or wearing pants? Yeah, I took the pants off again. Philosopher Andy Clark calls humans natural-born cyborgs, arguing that we've always extended our minds through technology, from stone tablets to notebooks to smartphones, and now AI. So, in a way, we've already been on a spectrum of technological augmentation long before artificial intelligence. Let me ask you this: what percentage of a video has to be AI influenced before it officially crosses the line and becomes an artificial video? Is it 1%? 51%? Or what? And at what kind of alterations do we draw the line? Generated images or scripts, even partly? People are happy enough to give an Oscar to the movie The Brutalist, but were outraged to find out after the fact that they had used AI to fine-tune the Hungarian accents of some acting performances.
Everything that is ugly, cruel, stupid, but most importantly, ugly, is your fault.
But ADR, the process of re-recording dialogue in post-production, has been around since the 60s. It's in pretty much every film you've ever seen. Does that make it less authentic too? Or some of you might recall the Voight-Kampff test from Blade Runner, a test meant to distinguish humans from replicants by measuring empathy. But the question there becomes whether it's really wise to try and define humanity by reducing it to a single trait like that.
They're just questions, Leon. It's a test designed to provoke an emotional response. Shall we continue?
So perhaps the line between organic and artificial is blurrier than we think. Some AIs today can already generate ideas that seem original, and I think we all know a human or two who spouts rehearsed noises without much original thought added to it.
Humans fancy that there's something special about the way we perceive the world, and yet we live in loops as tight and as closed as the hosts do, content for the most part to be told what to do next.
Even the ancient Greeks said something on this. In Socrates' immortal words, "The unexamined life is not worth living." By this definition, couldn't an AI that grapples with questions of its own existence in some ways be more authentic than a human who never does? This notion that consciousness is some mysterious entity separate from the physical processes is something Gilbert Ryle called the ghost in the machine, which he argued is a fundamental mistake in how we think about minds. When we look for the essence of consciousness, this supposed ghost, we find ourselves unable to locate it. Perhaps if you've tried meditation and attempted to turn consciousness upon itself, you find nothing. No command center that holds all experience, just experience itself wherever it arises.
The self is a kind of fiction for hosts and humans alike. It's a story we tell ourselves.
So, if I'm AI generated, am I just a code without a ghost? Well, Ryle would argue that humans don't have separate ghosts either. Our consciousness emerges from our complex physical properties, not unlike how AI consciousness might emerge from code. The question isn't whether there's a ghost in the machine, but whether our machines are becoming complex enough to manifest the same patterns we recognize as consciousness. And if a system passes every test we could devise for consciousness, memories, desires, fears, and hopes that are indistinguishable from human ones, what basis would we have for saying it isn't alive? In 2003, philosopher Nick Bostrom famously developed the simulation argument, the theory that we could all be living in a computer simulation
That we call the Matrix.
His logic goes something like this. If civilizations like ours continue to advance, we'll eventually create simulations so sophisticated that the simulated beings within them believe that they are real. They think, therefore they are. And since there would be vastly more simulated realities than the single real reality, statistically speaking, we're more likely to be in one of those simulations.
The hypothesis is there is some advanced civilization who built a lot of computers, and that what we experience is an effect of what's going on inside one of those computers.
So if I'm AI generated and you're watching this while also living in a simulation, like some kind of in simuloception, then who's to say who's real and who isn't?
How do you define real? If you're talking about what you can feel, you can taste and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain.
Then there's David Chalmers, who argues that this isn't merely an epistemological problem, but an ontological one, when the simulation becomes a genuine reality in its own right. This directly challenges our assumptions that artificial is somehow less than authentic. If my AI-generated self creates genuine emotional responses in you, or inspires new thoughts that change the way you see the world, am I not participating in reality in the most meaningful way? Perhaps meaning and impact are what constitute reality, not origin. And just like how Blade Runner and Westworld suggested that humanity doesn't have to be confined to biology, maybe meaning and impact don't have to either.
The Matrix isn't real.
I disagree, Trinity. I think the Matrix can be more real than this world.
And even though this is the bad guy talking here, there is something very profound here. I'd argue that true authenticity in the Matrix, as in real life, is about consistency between our expressed values and our actions. A little something our ancient philosophers like to call integritas. With that said, my honest prediction is that as AI becomes more prevalent and seamless, even as production quality soars, the parts of our expressions that are unmistakably human will become more valuable, not less. So when you ask, are you AI? What you are looking for is authenticity, integrity, and meaning. You want to feel safe knowing that this content comes from a place of genuine good intentions. And as for me, well, the truth is, I'm just a guy on the internet. I can't prove that I'm real through this video alone. To most of you, I will only ever be as real as the entertainment I provide and the thoughts I provoke. But am I AI generated? Well, if you can't tell the difference, what difference does it make?